Hello, everybody. Welcome back from your short break. My name is Mike. I'm the head of partnerships here at Avask, and I'm delighted to be introducing you to our next speaker, who is Oscar Webb, who is the Senior Account Manager at Amazon. And this next session is going to be focusing on expanding your business into Europe with Amazon through the new cross-border fulfillment programs. So in this session, you're going to learn a little bit more about Amazon's small parcel shipping solutions between the UK and EU, which will allow you to inbound inventory across the UK-EU customs border, and opening up the EU fulfillment programs to access millions of additional Amazon customers and boosting sales by up to 30%. So, Oscar, it's delightful to meet you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Mike. Yes, thank you very much for sort of introducing me, and I'm sort of very glad to be on a Team by webinar. Yeah, if I may, I'll sort of get started.
Yeah, please do. Thanks very much, Oscar. Thank
you. Thank you. So yeah, hello everyone, and thank you for sort of joining today's session on Amazon's cross-border shipping solutions. So just to give a bit of background, I'm going to first sort of introduce myself. So I've been an account manager at Amazon in the marketplace business for over 2 years now, and I'm located in the UK Pan-European FBA team. So my core role is centered around sort of consulting a wide range of businesses on how to effectively launch their businesses into Europe on Amazon, and then provide the guidance so that once they are launched into Europe, they can grow across our many European stores, which is a continually expanding marketplace. Alongside this, I have been a part of multiple projects within Amazon that are focused on helping businesses such as yours navigate the sort of complexities of shipping across the sort of UK-EU customs border and sort of, reopening that sort of EU market. So as we go through this presentation, I'm hoping to give you an insight on the sort of developments Amazon is driving to help sort of innovate and improve the kind of cross-border shipping and selling experience. If any of you sort of attend our sort of Amazon webinar series, you may have seen me before discussing, how to grow your business in Europe. I've sort of done a few of these sort of types of webinars before. If you haven't, and you are interested in learning more about sort of, the intricacies of our sort of European FBA programs, do go to the webinars library on Seller Central. We've got a lot of good content there, and there's a lot of webinars coming up, which I may mention a couple of those up and coming during our presentation. You may be aware we did launch an announcement yesterday. So you may have received an email regarding the sort of reopening of the European fulfillment network between the UK and the EU. We will be hosting webinars on that sort of reopening on February the 15th and I think March the 24th. So do visit the webinars homepage in Seller Central and look out for an email from the webinars team, which I think normally come out at the start of each month, to kind of register for those if you want more information. I can also, we will have time at the end for Q&A. If there's any kind of questions that come through there, I may be able to support. I do want to emphasize, most of this presentation is going to be on our kind of current sort of small parcel shipping solutions. However, I'm more than happy to support on wider queries around expanding in Europe. So do feel free to drop questions throughout the presentation that we'll sort of answer at the end on how to expand into Europe effectively. Awesome. So let's just quickly kind of go through our agenda for today. So I'm going to sort of start off with kind of a brief recap of the current situation and sort of challenges, as well as sort of what is in development. I'll then take some time to explain why shipping directly into the EU remains your best growth option, even when considering the additional steps and costs required to achieve this. So when we cover this, I hope to add some sort of high-level guidance that should introduce you to, the expansion journey that sort of I typically advise the businesses I work with. And I refer to this kind of journey as such as a kind of manageable growth strategy. It's sort of a method that sort of helps drive sustained growth without necessarily overwhelming your business too quickly. So, we'll cover that in more detail. And, as I said, I'll happily take questions at the end if you want me to explain it further. And once we understand kind of the optimal selling journey, we'll focus more onto the pivotal step of inbounding that inventory into the EU fulfillment centers. From there, I'm going to cover 2 key small parcel shipping solutions that we've been building and what they kind of currently look like. So as we will discuss, they're still at kind of comparatively early stages in their development compared to sort of other FBA programs. But today's session will give you those insights on the direction that we're moving toward to enable kind of cross-border business. So I'm sure many of you will be interested in getting involved in these solutions after the webinar. And thus we have kind of created an online registration form to share your interest. So I've provided the link in the chat already. So sort of I've said hello everyone and just dropped that link. If you are interested in us sort of engaging you and sort of getting you involved on either of the solutions that we cover today, do go to that link and sort of submit your information and then we'll contact you. Awesome. So let's start quickly discussing the kind of current situation. I'm sure many attending today are fully aware that the UK formally left the EU sort of single market and customs union on January 1st, 2021. Now, as a consequence of this, Amazon had to pause our kind of key cross-border fulfillment programs. So that's the European Fulfillment Network and Pan-European FBA from functioning between the UK and the EU. This was due to, the introduction of the customs border, which, we were not in a position to fulfill or move inventory across in a kind of compliant or scalable way. Now, we're excited to be in a position to start discussing the launches of sort of 2 key small parcel shipping solutions. This quarter, the programs are sort of remaining in a sort of purely invite-only phase, so hence I'm sort of dropping the link in the chat. And, we will then look to kind of scale them as we go through the year. Awesome. So before we dive into the solutions, I just want to kind of cover why it is that sort of Amazon is focused on building kind of a small parcel shipping option. I'm also going to try and add some of my thoughts on how you might like to position the various options when you consider your sort of international sales and sort of growth strategies. Okay, so I just want to kind of quickly ensure that we all have kind of the same view on the kind of standard steps for selling with Fulfillment by Amazon FBA, as we may have sort of businesses of all different types of expertise joining us today. So many of you may be fully aware of this kind of pathway by now, but I want us to pay particular attention to step 2 here, which is sending your products to our fulfillment centers. This is going to be the key step in the FBA journey for effectively selling across Europe. When the UK was part of the EU, a UK business was able to send their inventory to one of our UK fulfillment centers. And with programs such as Pan-European FBA, Amazon could move that inventory into Europe on sort of the seller's behalf at no additional cost to them. But as I mentioned, due to the challenges in moving inventory kind of across a customs border, sellers wanting to utilize kind of prime next day delivery FBA experience for their customers in Europe now need to inbound their inventory to the EU directly. Awesome. So Why should I send my inventory to Europe? Well, to drive strong sales conversions isn't just about, the product you are selling itself. I'm sure we all know how hard it can be to get really good product to start selling in a market. So when expanding into Europe, this may also, occur for even the most established domestic lines. Notably, from my experience, brand owners who have not stepped into any new markets in sort of any capacity before are sort of prone to this challenge of sort of having to get sort of started again. But with the opportunity to increase your potential customer base to more than sort of 100 million monthly Amazon customers, there's plenty of growth potential on the other side of those kind of initial challenges. So Amazon, we continue to seek ways to help improve the sort of transition into these new markets. I think a notable example of this was the implementation of global review sharing last year. So that meant that businesses did not have to kind of launch products onto new Amazon stores without any reviews. So, that's a big win. We know that reviews are critical to gaining kind of customer interest and trust. So, if you built that in the domestic market, you want to show those international customers that, you've got a good reputation, etc. And that's definitely helped a lot of businesses with that initial growth phase. Besides this, the standard levers such as advertising or vouchers, how do we effectively impact sales conversion? Well, my first answer, is a deep focus on the detail page. You would be surprised how many businesses I see that do not invest in professional translations. At Amazon, we like to work backwards from the customer experience. So if the customer visits your product page and it doesn't read naturally to them, they are less likely to trust the quality of the product. So, I want to use this sort of webinar as an avenue to just reinforce that and say, do invest in really good translations and sort of detail page images, etc. from the start. But ultimately, the drivers that are going to help a customer pick between your product and another similar item is how competitive that offer is. So in my opinion, there is many inputs into how sort of competitive an offer is, but there's three key areas that we should focus on. The first is price, that I think goes without saying. The second is delivery speed, and then the final is kind of the confidence on the delivery method. So on Amazon, many of these key inputs will have an impact on a business's ability to win what we define as the buy box. And we know that sort of Amazon is quite a competitive environment to sell through. So if you can get yourself winning the buy box, you're going to get that traffic coming through. Now, in terms of FBA, we all know it's sort of a highly respected fulfillment service. This is kind of clearly defined by the trust that the Prime badge gives customers on the sort of level of customer service that they will expect. So, getting onto FBA is obviously that first step in sort of those kind of key inputs. But I would argue that not all FBA programs are necessarily equal, and a business's choice on where to store their inventory is going to influence their competitiveness of offers to customers and ultimately that sales conversion. So we've announced the reopening of the European fulfillment network between the UK and EU in a few months' time, which will allow sort of UK businesses to fulfill customers in Europe using their UK inventory, and sort of vice versa, so EU businesses selling to the UK. But this program will have a significantly longer delivery speed of around, I think on average, we're looking at sort of 5 days. And it's going to have higher fulfillment fees. Obviously, we're sending that inventory from one country to another when the customer makes an order. That is more expensive. Now, considering how price and delivery speed were sort of those two of those kind of key drivers of sales conversions, we're hoping that this solution of EFN between the UK and EU, shouldn't be considered as the optimal expansion program. I would position it as a first step in terms of expanding. If you've already sort of expanded into Europe and you are inbounding into Europe, then you could use it as kind of like a backup in case you've got challenges getting the stock into the EU. With that sort of level of detail would be covered in more on the kind of the EFN sort of specific webinars. But ultimately, a program called Pan-European FBA would be considered the optimal FBA program for you to sort of expand your business in Europe with unique business sort of benefits. You can accelerate your growth with kind of flexible storage by, choosing yourself the countries where Amazon will redistribute and store your products. You'll lower the fulfillment fees. In some instances, you save up to 53% in fulfillment fees in the countries that you've enabled for storage. That will help the price competitiveness. Then you've got, your products are going to benefit from the Prime badge. So you'll have Prime next day delivery for those countries, again, that you're storing the inventory in. That is the optimal customer experience. I think we can all agree that, if a customer sees that they can get the product next day, whereas your competitor's product has a 4-day delivery speed, they're probably going to buy yours, even if it might be slightly more expensive. Convenience is key. And last but not least, Amazon will handle all of the inventory management work, distributing your inventory across the countries that you've enabled for the storage and matching the potential demand per country. So what I mean by that is, with this program, you could inbound into one country, let's say Germany, and then Amazon would be able to proactively redistribute that inventory across other countries that you've got the storage enabled in, so that when a customer orders your product in France, for example, that inventory is located much closer to them. The delivery sort of speed is going to be much faster, ultimately helping you drive that sales conversion. So generally, we can sort of target a 1 to 2 day delivery promise across the EU if you've got the Pan EU experience enabled. But as I said, that's the end goal. There's steps to get there, and dual inbounding is that first step. We need to focus on getting the inventory to at least one EU country first, and then we can start looking at expanding into those other markets. So, now we kind of hopefully understand why it's so important to get that inventory located in the EU. Now, we typically refer to the behavior of sending products to fulfillment centers on both the sort of UK and EU side of the border as dual inbounding. So I may use this term sort of again as we progress through the webinar, so I just wanted to clarify that. So dual inbounding is usually achieved using kind of one or two models. So the first is shipping from the UK to the EU across the UK-EU customs border. And then the second is kind of splitting from source. So for example, China. And so, sending from China into the EU directly. So for any business that sources products outside of the UK or EU, we would encourage you to explore splitting from source, as that's going to reduce the number of customs borders that your products are going to go through, and ultimately reduce the level of duties that you're having to pay on any given unit before they even reach our fulfillment centers. Now, I work with businesses such as yourselves regularly, so I appreciate that sometimes it can be very difficult to achieve a kind of split from source model. And so, this is why we're going to be focusing today on that first option, which is, the shipping from the UK to the EU across that UK-EU customs border. Okay. And, before I sort of dive into these solutions, there's a few things for us to consider when we're navigating through a customs border to complete sort of an inventory transfer rather than a cross-border sale. So inventory transfer is a slightly unique type of customs movement, as you know, there isn't a direct sale across the customs border. Thus, you know, there isn't necessarily two different legal entities involved in the transfer. So there isn't necessarily a different exporter of record to the importer of record. You as a UK business will typically be both the exporter and the importer. So this has some things to consider when we're going through customs. So for an inventory transfer, because there's not this change in ownership of your products, as a UK business, you know, you're going to need a EU EORI number to go alongside your UK one. This allows kind of EU customs to identify sort of who your business is. And then what is referred to as an indirect representative. It is often also referred to as like an importer of record service. And I'll cover that a little bit more in the sort of following slides. So here I've sort of put in a sort of overview of kind of the key steps for kind of being set up for customs. You know, some of you may have already kind of gone through this by now, but for those that haven't, you know, here's some insight. And you know, many of you have probably tried to find a solution that works for you in sort of shipping cross border. You know, either successfully or unsuccessfully. Today, you know, these solutions that we are developing are successfully, you know, getting products across. From my experience, you know, helping businesses, you know, the most common cause for unsuccessful cross-border shipments and stock getting kind of stuck at customs, you know, has been sort of an inappropriate brokerage service, in the sense that if you only have a UK legal entity, and when you're importing into the EU, you're going to require that sort of indirect representation. So this is a service where your freight forwarder or customs broker essentially acts in a sense as your EU entity for the shipment and takes joint liability at customs. So not all carriers or brokers will provide this service because they take an element of risk on them by taking that joint liability. And it's not the default option. So I've seen many businesses who've kind of created parcel shipments to the EU with, you know, well-known carriers, but they did not, you know, ensure that they were sending them with this level of service, this indirect representation or importer of record service. And so ultimately their products weren't getting cleared correctly at customs, you know, which meant that, you know, the inventory got stuck at customs. The carrier needed to return that inventory back, and I've seen some cases where it's even taken months for that inventory to get returned. That is obviously, you know, a huge frustration for businesses, and so this is where, you know, our small parcel solutions are looking to improve the cross-border shipping experience. We're looking to bring to you end-to-end solutions that include those brokerage services that we know you need in a sort of easier to access way. So hopefully that's cleared up where we're trying to innovate. So what are the sort of EU parcel solutions? So, you know, Amazon, as I said, sort of we've developed some cross-border shipping options with those importer of record services included. This is removing those challenges of finding a customs broker that not only can provide that service, but can also integrate with the carrier that you're wanting to transport with. So, you know, ultimately we're able to share a, you know, effective solution for inbounding. And so removing that complexity and perceived risk of international shipping. Awesome. So, you know, what are the kind of key benefits? So as we see here, you know, most of these solutions we've integrated into Seller Central, and there'll be continued developments on that space to make your whole kind of Amazon experience much more centralized within Seller Central. The kind of custom side of things is covered, but also our brokers are there to support you in understanding how to complete your invoices and making sure that they're validated in a way that gives you the confidence when your shipment gets to customs, they're going to be cleared effectively. So, you know, confidence is a key thing here, as well as sort of efficiency and costs. So, you know, here's a breakdown of kind of the two key options that we have. So the first is the UPS Partner Carrier Program. And the second is the Amazon Transportation Services Solution, so ATS. So here we can see kind of a breakdown of the kind of key elements for both options in terms of a fee perspective. Now, I appreciate that you know, from a fee perspective, this is a core focus. Now, there's three main types of fees. So the first is the onboarding fee. So here we can see that Amazon is subsidizing those fees for you. So, you know, you don't necessarily have to worry about those, which is great. The only real difference here is with the PCP program, you as a business would pay the onboarding fee to the broker, and then Amazon would reimburse you through Seller Central, whereas with ATS, we would just sort of directly pay the broker. Then we've got the second sort of type of fees, which is those customs fees. Those are split into two. So one is the importer of record service fee. This is covering the costs of that indirect representation. As I said, you know, the brokers do take on some risk by providing that service, and so on the PCP side, you know, the fee can sort of vary depending on what is the perceived risk of that shipment. On the ATS side, we managed to create some agreements for now at least, subsidize those kind of the indirect representation fee. Then we move on to the brokerage fee. So, you know, this is the actual kind of cost of the broker submitting your export declaration and your import declarations. As you can see here, you know, we have a slightly different model. And then finally, we've got the transport costs. So we've got two different ways that the shipping is being done. I'll go through that more on the following slides. The first is with PCP, we've reduced international freight costs. So you'll see that those are very competitive. And then on the next slide, on the other solution, you're going to be inbounding yourself into the UK, and then Amazon will sort of move the inventory to the EU. So you're only going to be paying kind of domestic shipping rates rather than having to worry about international freight rates. I'll go into this in a little bit more. Okay, apologies here. Awesome. So benefits. Okay, so the key benefits of talking about the UPS PCP here. So the key benefits here is, you know, and it's the same for both really, is the end-to-end service element that's including the transport, the customs representation, that customs support. Now, PCP is already a sort of strong domestic program. I'm sure many of you are aware of it and likely use that to inbound sort of products domestically. And so elements of this program are going to be already integrated within Seller Central. You know, this streamlines the shipment workflow once you're kind of creating the shipment, and as we'll kind of automatically be sending details to UPS so that, you know, when you sort of engage with them to schedule your pickup, that's all you kind of need to focus on. There's complete tracking of the shipments. Again, that'll be integrated into Seller Central as well as on the sort of the UPS platform. And then finally, we're subsidizing those freight costs to make sending to the EU as much of an option as sending to your local fulfillment center, whilst also negotiating those kind of brokerage fees to make this a sort of a pretty cost-effective solution. So let's just kind of go through, how this kind of works. So here we've got a breakdown of how this works. So ultimately, there's going to be a few steps when you're initially onboarding. But once you are sort of using the solution and sort of moving forward, it's a fairly straightforward solution. You create your shipment on Seller Central. Amazon then shares that shipping information to UPS. You then contact the broker, you share your commercial invoice, and make sure that they'll validate that. Once that's validated, you then book your pickup with UPS, and then the products will get sent across. We're typically seeing a delivery speed of about 8 to 10 days, which is pretty good from what we've seen compared to sort of other sort of shipping options. Awesome. Wonderful. So I'm just going to go to ATS. So many businesses will have been aware of that kind of UPS PCP program. So you might not be surprised by the extension of that program to kind of cross-border shipping. Some of you may have been around and trying to sell into the EU. When we just when Brexit kind of first hit as such, and we did have this solution up and running then. It wasn't in an optimal position. We had some issues, so that's why it's been paused for so long. But that partner carrier program is back up and running, and we are confident with how that's functioning. But on the side of that, we've been looking at how else can we innovate in this space, right? And so this is where ATS is our kind of newer addition to the small parcel solutions. And this is using a slightly different model to that PCP. So in terms of the benefits here, the onboarding is quicker. So it sort of within a week, you can, from initial contact, be ready to ship. And similar to the PCP solution, there's real-time tracking. The brokers have their own portal as well, which helps you. And finally, as you may have noticed on that fee breakdown, the shipping to the EU will essentially be the same as the shipping to the domestic fulfillment center. Amazon covers the cost of the sort of international freight, so you just need to pay the kind of fixed brokerage fee. So I'll cover that sort of more here. So how does ATS work? So ATS is utilizing the sort of Amazon transport networks. And so with this model, rather than sending from the UK to the EU directly, you're actually first inbounding to a specific sort center in the UK. And this means as a business, you're only having to transport the product domestically with your carrier. At the moment, that carrier kind of needs to be UPS. And so you're only having to pay, domestic freight costs. Once that shipment arrives at our sort center in the UK, we then sort of transfer that to our kind of freight channels to then transport the goods to the EU, which is done at no extra cost to you. So we're covering that international freight element. In the same fashion as the PCP solution, you will need to validate your commercial invoice with your broker. And currently ATS can support shipments to kind of both Germany and France, whereas I think PCP is only at the moment sending to Germany. But additional kind of inbounding locations are going to be supported as we kind of scale those solutions further. So hopefully, this session has been an interesting insight into the developments on the cross-border solutions at Amazon. There's certainly more to come as we kind of continue to seek ways to innovate in this space. For now, if you are interested in getting more information, etc., on either of these solutions, I've shared the link, and you can register your interest. I'm now going to sort of open up for Q&A. I think we've got a decent amount of time, so I'll hand back over to Mike, and then I'll stop sharing my screen so you can see us in large.
That's perfect. Thanks so much, Oscar. So yes, we've got about 15 minutes remaining on the session now. So I think the first question that's been asked is, when is the new Pan-European FBA program starting? Okay, so
this is an interesting question that typically comes up with some form of miscommunication. So Pan-European FBA has existed for years and is a program within Europe where if you have multiple VAT numbers and you've enabled storage in multiple countries, if you inbound your products to one country, Amazon can proactively move that inventory across the other countries so that your inventory is closer to customers across Europe. So that's Pan-European FBA. That's existed for I think 8 years or so now. The only change that's happened there is that the UK was disconnected from that. And so to get access to that program, you need to dual inbound, send that inventory directly into the EU. I think what your question is alluding to is the reopening of the European Fulfilment Network, which we announced yesterday. That's going to start scaling from March. So you can go to your cross-border fulfillment settings on Seller Central and click to enroll. And then when we start doing what we call a dial-up, we can't launch all of the sellers that are interested too quickly. It kind of overruns our systems. So over a matter of a few weeks or a couple months, we will start enabling it for businesses. That'll be taking place from March.
Okay, that's absolutely perfect. Thank you. The second question that came in is, what is the Amazon definition of small parcel?
Yes. So small parcel, to be honest, is actually a box. It's basically a shipment that's not pallet. It's probably the easiest way for me to describe it. It's a non-pallet shipment.
Okay, so a small parcel could be made up, say, of a number of different boxes of different sizes.
Yeah. So you can send lots of boxes at the same time. Obviously, the more boxes you send, the rate card will adjust accordingly. I think there's a weight limit on the boxes, though. I think you need to check with UPS. It should all be on the kind of partner carrier program help page in Seller Central, but I think it's around 30 kilograms is the weight limit of the box.
Okay, that's perfect. And the final question that we've got on the screen. So if you do have any more questions, now's the time to ask them. Will there always be just UPS based UPS used on ATS, or will more carriers be added?
It's a really good question. So I think here I'll give you a bit of context on why it currently needs to be UPS. So to enable ATS as an option, we've had to sort of reconfigure the way that our channels are working, and because we have a specific action at the sort center. We need to be careful that we don't overrun that sort center, because it's not a fulfillment center. It's a slightly different building as such that doesn't have the same inbounding capacity as some of our larger fulfillment centers do. So we're saying kind of UPS because we have agreements with them and we can plan more appropriately. But I don't have vision, unfortunately, on what the future direction of that will be. So for now, it's just UPS.
Okay, that's absolutely perfect. Thanks very much. Another question has just come in. I'm looking to enter the Middle East market. Does Amazon have a similar program for that market?
Yeah, really good question. So you can access the Middle East, start getting selling there through Seller Central. If you're on your Seller Central, you go inventory, sell globally, then you can see the markets that you can expand to. And if you click on the Middle East, then there should be information on how you can sort of start expanding there. In terms of Turkey, that's another expanding market. Turkey is another sort of one, and I believe your EU, if you've got inventory in the EU, that can start being sort of listed as available to customers in Turkey. So that's a really interesting space. But I'd say look at that Sell Globally page, and try and go through the information there.
That's absolutely perfect. Okay, so our business sells large and heavy exercise equipment requiring two-man delivery. Can I enter FBA with these kinds of products?
So for those types of products domestically, so in the UK, I would say definitely. We have a program now called Heavy and Bulky, which would be an ideal program for those types of products. The key sort of, I guess, USP for that program is obviously with big products, people, like a washing machine or something, people want to know when it's going to be delivered. And so customers can select like a specific slot that FBA will deliver those big products, which is a much better customer experience. In terms of within the EU, I think Heavy and Bulky might be up and running in Germany and maybe France. Unfortunately, I'm not involved on those programs, so I have limited. But I wouldn't advise the pan-European solution for those products because it will be very expensive for us to be kind of proactively shipping. So for you, try and focus on what we call a multi-country inbounding solution. So you would send inventory directly to Germany, inventory directly to France, and then you can access those domestic, like Heavy and Bulky programs. So that'll be my recommendation there.
Okay, that's perfect. Well, that's all of the questions that we've had coming in. I suppose as we just before we start wrapping up, what's your number one tip, I think, for 2022 going forward?
Yeah, really, really good question. So my big thing is sort of really pay attention to the developments that we're making at Amazon. There's been a lot of communications that have been going out over the last few months. I appreciate everyone's kind of been focused on, getting those sales in sort of the final quarter of last year. But we're, for context, at Amazon, last year was very much a focus on, I guess, kind of Brexit recovery. It's not a defined term. Don't quote me on that. But we are definitely in a position now where for 2022, we believe we can drive, Brexit expansion, right? Like we're looking at expansion rather than recovery. And what that means is our belief is we've got those solutions in place or coming that mean, the EU is a growth opportunity for everyone again. Okay. So, watch the webinars, read up on the seller content, pay attention to our notifications around, new policies. I think a big one that's coming up is EPR. So, please do pay attention to those if you're selling in Germany or France. And yeah, just sort of focus on the developments. And I think the second one is coming back to this kind of manageable growth strategy. So if you're launching into the EU, we've obviously got multiple different, you can sell into sort of 7 different stores now. That to an extent can be quite overwhelming initially. How do I manage setting up advertising campaigns, deals, etc. in all these stores? Initially, especially if you're a smaller or medium-sized business, that's a lot of effort. So the way I would encourage you to drive it is firstly focus on the kind of the 4 main stores, so Germany, France, Italy, and Spain. Invest in those translations, get the detail page set up, and then optimize one store at a time. So let's say focus on Germany, get your advertising, you've done well in the UK. That's why you're looking to expand. Repeat those, good practices you have domestically in Germany, get that market set up. And then once that's set up, you can then move to, doing the same in France, etc. And you sort of break down, that sort of wider journey into more manageable chunks.
That's perfect. Thanks very much. And finally, I think we've got one last question. How would I receive returns from Europe as a UK seller if I use FBA?
Yeah, really, really good question here. So the first thing to notify is we are unable to process a removal order across the customs border. So for inventory that you've got stored in FBA in Europe, if you wanted to get it back to the UK, you would need to do a removal order to an address in the EU. And then from there, it could be sent, you can manage sending it back to the UK. We have service providers who can support with that process. So if you're on Seller Central, you go inventory, sell globally, and then sort of on top of that page, there's a link to find a provider, which will take you through to the service provider network, and there's international return solutions there.
Okay, that's absolutely perfect. Thanks very much. So we've come to, I think we're coming up to the end of the session now. I can't see any more questions coming in. So Oscar, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been an absolute pleasure to listen to you and all of those wonderful insights that Amazon have had. It's been absolutely lovely.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. I hope it was a helpful session. And yeah, I'm sure you'll see more of me if you go to some of the Amazon webinars moving forward.
Oh yeah, no, that was absolutely great. Thank you so much. Okay, everyone. So thanks very much for attending this session. There will now be a networking break, and all sessions will recommence at around 1:30 p.m. So that's 13:30 GMT. Please do take some time to visit the supplier showcases or meet with some of the fellow attendees. We'll be back at 1:30. So yeah, thanks very much. See you later.